Hi everyone, my name's Joshua and welcome to Northern Solar. So it's time for our 1 year review. So in this video we're going to look back at the last 12 months of production and consumption for our solar panels here in Cheshire. So there's a lot to get through, so let's jump straight into the presentation. So for those of you that are new to the channel, this is our house here. We've got 8 kilowatts of solar on the roof. So there's 10 panels on this side, which is the west facing side, and 10 panels on the back. They're connected to a 6 kilowatt SolarEdge inverter, and we have 13 kilowatt hours of Growatt Battery storage. So yeah, this has been the last 12 months of our YouTube channel here. We've got all the different seasons, from blazing sunshine, snow on the panels, rain, everything you could think of throughout the year. So yeah, each month we've been doing videos to show the monthly consumption and usage and trying to answer the question, are solar panels worth it? So far it's been going really well, and over the last 12 months we've got up to over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So I just want to say a quick massive thank you to everybody for subscribing and keeping the channel going. So into the interesting information. So this is our solar production graph for the year. We started here in April, so that's 2022, all the blue ones, and then we've just finished 2023 March. So as you can see, there's a really obvious sort of curve to solar, as you'd expect in the UK. We get really good production through the spring, summer and autumn, and then really, really poor in the winter. So our total across the year was 6,656 kilowatt hours. I'll go into a bit more detail about what the predictions were before we started later on, but for now let's just look at what we actually did. So our highest month was in June, which was 1,020 kilowatt hours. It was the only time we managed to get over 1 megawatt hour in a month. It was really quite amazing to see that happen from just 8 kilowatt of solar, especially considering we're split east and west in our house. The lowest month, unsurprisingly, was December. Really low down, 87. January wasn't much better either. So yeah, the total 6,656, giving us an average of 555 kilowatt hours per month. So it's not really much use knowing an average because it changes so much. As you can see, there's such a huge difference. It's like 10 times better in the summer than it is in the winter. If anyone interested, our highest individual day was the 10th of July, which was 51.24 kilowatt hours. And our lowest day was in December the 10th, which was 0.13 kilowatt hours. That was the day when we had snow completely covering the panels all day. So on average, our daily production was 18.23 kilowatt hours. Again, averages doesn't really help because it changes so much between the seasons, but yeah. Okay. So this is what I put together for this video, is to show you how much sort of solar hours I've been getting here. And obviously this may vary depending on where you are and what sort of shading you might have on your roof. But this is what I took as an average day in each of the months, and when did I start producing solar energy in the morning and when did I end solar production in the evenings. And you can see obviously there's a huge difference in the winter months like January and December. You're getting just over 7 hours of sunshine. And the first hour and the last hour, it's not an awful lot of generation because of the angle of the sun. But when you get through into May, June, July, you're looking at 15, 16 hours of solar. And the sun gets much higher and stays up much longer, so you just get a huge amount of generation across those times. Like look at June, the sun was starting to generate on average at 4:45 AM. So it's almost... the batteries and things that you have on the system can charge even before you get out of bed. It's different. It's so much sort of more impressive in those summer months. The winter months, yeah, you're out of the house and on your way to work before the solar even starts generating, which is a bit more depressing. But that's what it's like here in the UK. So this is a bit of an odd one because we've got a lot of different factors involved in our consumption pattern, because it's also really important to take into account what consumption is when you're looking at your solar production, because yes, we've generated an awful lot, but our consumption is also really high as well. If we start, say, back in April here, that's when we didn't have a battery for the system. It hadn't been delivered then. And also in April and May, myself and my wife were both working from home at full time. So we didn't use the car very much. There was no charging of the car really, well, very little. So this shape of this graph looks odd. Over the next year or so we might see a slightly different consumption pattern, so it'll be interesting to see how it compares. But this is when we had one plug-in hybrid and one petrol car, and we weren't really driving either of them. And then in June I went back to work in office, so I had to start using the car more, so then we can see more consumption. So we're charging the car more throughout the summer. So you can see this pretty consistent through the summer. Then there's 2 massive drop-off months, but this is when we got married and went on a honeymoon, so we weren't actually at home using any electricity for a vast chunk of October, November. So you can see this dropped off. Normally you'd expect this to start ramping up, and as you can see in December it did start to increase our consumption in the property. And then January, February, March is when we got the new EV, we got the Renault Zoe, so we were charging that car every night, and as well as the plug-in hybrid. So you can see our consumption all of a sudden has shot up considerably since the start of this year. So I can give the highest usage in 1 month was 816, which was January. Did a lot of driving in January, about 800 or 900 miles, all on EV in the new Zoe. And then the lowest usage was in November. Unsurprisingly, we weren't in the country for most of November, so unsurprisingly we didn't use very much there. So our total consumption in the property was 6687, which is almost exactly the same as what we produced across the year, give or take. I think it's about 30 kilowatt hours. I'm assuming now, I'm predicting now, that obviously our monthly consumption is going to be more similar to this, as I'm still driving a lot more with work, and this is probably going to be more like our average. I do see our consumption going higher than the average of 557 kilowatt hours, probably averaging around 750 a month now with both cars charging. So moving on, are we self-sufficient? So what I mean by self-sufficient is, are we generating more than we are using? And you can see from this one, obviously with our quite strange consumption spread across the year, and only 1 year's worth of data to use for that. The generation, I've kind of put the generation in here. That's what we actually had in terms of generation. Is pretty normal curve. The consumption is not great. It's obviously a bit wonky with the difference in usage patterns that we've had. But in April, May, June, July, August, and just about in September, we generated more than we used in the property. And then for the other half of the month, October, November, December, January, February, March, we didn't. So that means we had to use electricity from the grid in order to power the house, because there wasn't enough solar. And when I say solar, I mean solar during the day, and also then that solar charged in the batteries to help us power the house overnight as well. So what we then have to do is look at what we do with the batteries at various times of the year. We'll go into that in a little while, but this is just the spreadsheet that I use to sort of track the figures throughout the year and show you them with the financials as well. So solar production 6656, of which we exported 3,505 units back to the grid. We are looking to reduce that. I've mentioned it in previous videos. We're using more of it now, charging the cars, and we've fitted a My Energy Eddy this month to get more usage into heating our hot water as well. So we're able to consume this year 3,150 of our produced solar, but 3,536 of that also our consumption came from the grid. We were able to use the vast majority of our grid consumption during our cheap off-peak period on Octopus Go by charging the home batteries through the winter, and also a lot of that energy is charging the car. So our total peak consumption from the grid in the whole year was 218 kilowatt hours. Most of that would actually have come in April this time last year when we didn't have the battery, so in the evenings we were still having to draw from the grid for a whole month before we got our battery installed. So if you go over to the financials, the yearly standing charge for electricity was the same with or without solar, £173.23. Our cost for that entire grid usage of 3,536 units was £339.38, because we were using most of that off peak. So our total electricity cost, including standing charge and the usage of the grid, was £512.61 for the year. And we also earned £188.66 from our export tariff, which means our net cost for electricity for the year was £323.95. So that still seems like quite a high figure, but when you compare it to what it would have cost us if we didn't have any solar, even using a off-peak tariff as we were doing before we had solar panels, so charging the car off-peak and running things off-peak like the dishwasher and washing machine, our electricity bill for the year would have been £1,821.34. So saving just short of £1,500 in the year by having solar panels. So what you can see from these figures is the solar breakdown. It's how much of what we generated we were able to consume, which was 47%, and we exported 52%. We are, like I said, we are hoping to do better with that because we want to use what we generate because it's more cost effective than selling it back to the grid and then having to buy it back later for various reasons, whether it's heating or running things off peak over the night time. Well, what is good to see is if you look at the total usage in our property, the solar produces 47% of what we use in the property. The grid off peak is 49%, and then the peak time grid is only 3%. So this gives you a really good idea of just what we're able to do with the solar panels in the property. It's really reducing our reliance on the grid during peak times and not having to pay that peak rate electricity, only really paying for off-peak electricity at a really low rate. Currently that's 7.5 pence per unit, so it's due to expire later this year, so we'll have to see what new tariffs come out, but 7.5 pence per unit is phenomenally cheap to be able to use electricity from the grid, and we're able to do that by charging the car overnight and the home battery. So this was the breakdown of month to month. This spreadsheet is available on a link in the description for anyone that's interested in looking at it all in more detail. Really just, there's a lot of numbers in here that I type in from what we've generated, what we've exported, and what we've consumed peak time and off peak time. The interesting thing to see is this sort of spread here, I think, of what we're how our consumption is split, like grid, solar, and peak or off peak. So this time last year, when we didn't have the battery, we still had to use nearly 30% of our electricity came from the grid at peak times. 52% was from solar, and then 18% was overnight off peak tariff charging. So things like charging the car and running the washing machine and dishwasher during the night. What happened when we got the battery is you'll see a huge shift there, that the solar actually produced 96%, sorry, and our peak usage was down to 2.5%, and just shy of 1% was off peak. So here we didn't really do any driving very much like that month. There was not really any car charging happening at all. So that's why this one is like the best looking. Solar produced 96% of what we used in the property. Then, as I mentioned earlier, I started using the car more for work. So this became our sort of standard spread. We had about 80 to 83% usage from solar, 16 to 18% off-peak grid charging the car at night, and then again less than 1% usage of peak grid. You can see again then what happens as we go into autumn. You start seeing having to use more from the grid. So this now is when we started potentially charging the battery overnight to add more charge when we were running low on the battery. If there started to become not enough sun to charge the battery to run the house overnight. So what we end up doing is charging the battery overnight from the off-peak tariff as well. So you can see here this starts to impact our percentage, so down to 60% of our property being powered by solar, and the off-peak usage starts to go up. There is obviously a little increase in peak time usage as well, but I can go into more specifics on where the peak time usage comes in. Occasionally we would maybe charge the car a little bit during the peak time because it's still cheaper than buying petrol, and this was us kind of getting used to how much charge to put in the battery and when it would charge and when it would discharge. So you can see here, as you get into winter, the off-peak starts taking over, and in December, you're down less than 10% of our consumption is coming from solar, and the battery is doing the majority of the heavy lifting during these winter months. And then again, we got this new EV car, so we had even more off-peak charging. So as we got into March now, you can see this 64% is similar to what we were doing in September, October, yeah. So very similar sort of spread there. It'll be interesting to see what, I don't think we'll get back to this sort of level because there's always going to be more mileage in the car now, so more off-peak charging in that. So it'll be interesting to see how these graphs look next year. Anyway, moving on. This is the sort of split. So yeah, car charging was 3,014 units and the home was 3,673. So as you see, it takes a lot of electricity to run a car. So you really should be looking at getting an off-peak tariff if you're doing this many miles in a car. Yeah, 55% for the home and 45% of the car. That's from our total consumption of the property. So you can see and I think that will lean even more into car charging now as we go through this year with the EV and the plug-in hybrid. I can see this becoming a much higher percentage of what we do. The house itself is pretty efficient. We are moving over to electric hobs and heating in the hot water and the cooking. The central heating that we'll use in winter is still gas powered, unfortunately. Our house isn't really suitable for air source heat pumps and electrical heating, but at the moment we only really use the central heating if we really need to. We do have some electrical heating, but I'll go into that more when we get around to winter next time. So this is a breakdown of what on average, so we were looking to charge into the battery using our Octopus Energy off-peak tariff called Octopus Go. So we have 4 hours from 2:30 in the morning till 6:30 in the morning where we can charge the battery for 7.5p per kilowatt hour. So fully charging the battery costs just less than £1. And as our consumption on average for the house is less than 13 kilowatt hours, really we don't ever run out of battery power. So the most we can be spending on electricity a day, even if we fully use that 13 kilowatt hours, is 98p. And even on the worst days, you still get a few kilowatt hours from the sun, so you've always got a little bit extra from there. But this is not obviously extremely specific. We did change a few things around, but when I looked back at the averages, it looked about like this. So through April, May, June, July and August, there was no need to add any charge into the battery at night. As we got into autumn, I put charge into the battery at night up to 50% and then up to 80%, and there was still enough sun to cover the rest of the usage in the house without the battery running out. And then yeah, through the winter months, November, December, January, we fully charged the battery every night to make sure that we had enough energy in the battery to last the next day. So yeah, 13 kilowatt hours of storage, Octopus Go off-peak tariff. I mean, without that, the sort of payback and the system just doesn't really work. You're generating so much during the day, but there's nothing to use at night, and you're generating so much more in the summer, and there's not enough in the winter. So having the combination of solar and a battery storage with off-peak tariff, it really makes the system more efficient and more effective at saving you money. So this was what happened at the beginning when we first had our system installed. Our predicted production for the first year was actually 5,500, and they did tell me that was probably lower than it would be. They can't overpromise, so I was expecting more than 5,500, but to get 6,687, I was very happy with that. Whether or not that's better than an average year, I don't know. I'll wait until this time next year to see if 6,687 is good. It seems really good to me, and the more we can produce, the better, because we were predicted to save £1,358 in the first year, and actually we saved 1,497. So it's pretty simple, really. More solar equals more savings. Payback period is something everyone asks about all the time on these videos, and it's always something that's a bit hard to judge. What I've done now is been able to put in the data from the first full year that we have. So our cumulative savings of 1,495, it's based on these assumptions in here. I think, yeah, so it's 1,497, so pretty close with that. So I put in our actual consumption in the property and our actual production, and used these metrics here. That, again, this is all in the spreadsheet you can download if you're interested. to try and predict what we might save going forward. So if we know that this year we saved 1,495, and if we're factoring in inflation and system degradation, we think that the savings will increase year on year, giving us a payback period to pay back the initial investment of just under 8 years. Obviously these are all subject to assumptions, like no one really knows what the price of electricity is going to be next year, so it's really hard to judge how much money you're saving if you don't know what the price of electricity is going to be. You change any of these assumptions, these numbers can change massively, but being that we save just shy of £1,500 this year, I think we're in pretty good shape with the system to get a good return on the investment. Just a little aside for the EV enthusiasts, this is the Renault Zoe that we've got. We've only had it 3 months, but in that 3 months we've done 2,688 miles, which cost in total £61.88. That includes some rapid charging that we did while we were on longer journeys, but mostly charging from the grid off-peak at home. So that was an average cost per mile of 2.3 pence. If we took an average petrol car at 40 miles per gallon and £1.47 per litre of petrol, it would have cost us £449.08. So those 3 months have saved £387.20 by driving an EV, which is about £129 per month. Again, having the off-peak tariff and charging from home makes it an absolute no-brainer for us to have an electric car. They are more expensive than petrol cars, obviously, but if we look at the sort of financial benefits, I had a comment from someone on one of the previous videos that said this will be a good way of showing people what the financial benefits are. It's not that I'm an expert in financials, but this is kind of roughly what he pointed out. So if you look at the initial cost for our solar battery is roughly £15,000, and we're saving on average £125. And it's basically the same numbers for the electric car. £15,000 initial cost and saving £125 roughly. This just means that we can get a good simple percentage on here. So these are rough numbers, but they are pretty accurate as based on the figures that we've had in our house and our driving experience here. So a total initial cost of £30,000, monthly savings of £250, so an annual saving of £3,000. So £3,000 of £30,000 is a 10% return on the investment. So 10% return on investment for solar and battery, 10% return on investment for the Zoe EV. So an average total return on investment of 10%. I mean, I'm not a financial expert, but it seems pretty good to me. I don't think we're getting 10% in the savings account at the moment, so it seems to be a good investment. Obviously there's other factors to include, servicing costs and upgrades and all that sort of stuff, but you know, on average it's a pretty simple sum, that one. So yeah, usually at the end of my videos I give myself a little plug and say if anyone is considering moving to Octopus to get a tariff like we have off-peak charging for the car and the home battery, please do consider using the link in the description. You'll get £50 credit on your bill when you switch over, and we'll get £50 credit on our bill. Massive thank you to those who've already used the link. It is great to have extra credit on your bill occasionally, and yeah, so a huge thank you to anyone who has used that link. So coming back to me. So yeah, that's it. Obviously waffled on a little bit there at parts. Sorry if I went into a bit too much detail, but I figured being that it's a 12-month review and it's our first year, there's some really interesting facts and figures in there. And it just goes to show that when we're asking the question, are solar panels worth it? It's definitely yes. The amount that we're able to save each month is incredible. We are self-sufficient. I'm not going to say off-grid because it's not really how we do it. It's self-sufficient for a very big chunk of the year, and the other parts of the year we're drawing the electricity from the grid in the off-peak times. So yes, we're having a positive impact on the grid by not being using the grid at peak times, and we are getting a much cheaper rate for it to save us money. So I'll be doing another video in the next couple of weeks to go through April 2023 and comparing that also with April 2022 in terms of production, and then we can see what the difference is between having just solar in April 2022 like we did and having solar and batteries in April 2023. So yeah, if you've got any questions at all, please do drop them in the comments box below. I do love answering the questions. If anyone's got any advice or pointers for making these videos better, then please do let me know. I do find it difficult sometimes sitting here talking to the camera, not knowing really how much people want to know in terms of details. But yeah, any questions you've got, please let me know. And next month, yeah, there'll be April's video, and we might be looking at other videos when we've done our house renovation. It finally might be finished in April, maybe May. And then we'll be able to get the My Energy Eddy up and running and start having a look at how much money we can save off our gas bill by not having to heat our hot water with gas. So yeah, that's it really. Thanks everybody for watching. Sorry it was a long one, but hopefully you've enjoyed it. And yeah, thanks again for everyone for subscribing, and see you next time.